What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Into the Unknown podcast. We are live this week on a wonderful Wednesday evening. How are you doing this evening, Mr. Landis?
Good.
It's good. So it's been a couple weeks. You were away. I had some friends come and join, and then you got sick, and then I got busy, and now here we are. So,
All true.
We'd like to do a weekly thing if we could, but in all honesty, sometimes life just get in the way. It's very hard to make these work every once in a while, but we do our best. So Scott, this week I wanted to start with questions for the podcast.
Sure.
And we're gonna start with AJ, and AJ's question this week was, how do you go about determining how many uninkables you put in your deck? What's your rule of thumb?
I think it depends on how much card draw you have in your deck and how much access you have to, and then basically what the uninkables are going to do for you. So, in a lot of Amber decks, for example, like if you're using like a Hades or a, I guess that's pretty much the primary one that quote draws you a card, or like part of your world, I guess also that pseudo draw you a card at the same time as also being uninkable. I think it's a lot different than when you're playing like Emerald and a lot of your aggro characters are what are your uninkables. So I think it depends on like how important those uninkables are and what their cost is.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to I need to constantly ink until I get to that point.
Right.
And like if I have like a ton of 5 and 6 drops that I want to play that are uninkable and I'm not really gaining a lot of like draw power out of it, then I have to play less uninkables in my deck. But if I'm like, playing Amethyst with friends on the other side and like mirrors, and even though that's uninkable, like other ways of gaining card advantage where I don't I can ink all the time like without a problem,
Right.
I can play even more. So it comes down to how much draw you have or how much you're, in the case of like Sapphire, like how many ink drops you're willing to quote miss because you have ramp that's uninkable. Like I count Mickey as like almost like a draw at that point.
Right.
There was
Yeah,
an article about it that like really broke it down on TCG.
Where was that article?
TCG Player. I think it was Frank Karsten, an old Magic player that did it.
Okay.
I can try to find it if you want.
Yeah, you can figure it out. We can put it in the show notes of this one.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's just really weird. Like, I think there's a lot of feel to it. I don't even know that I have like a rule. In all honesty, like I just feel like I just build a deck with what I think is best for the deck, and then I play some games, and then I figure it out. I mean, sometimes it's very clear that there's too many, and then sometimes it's just it works out. I don't know. I definitely don't go like, oh, I can only play 12 or I can only play 14. Yeah. Like I don't really have that mindset like at all. So I think it's just a comfortability thing. And I also think it's like just a repetition thing also. Like you have to understand your deck really well, and you have to understand that like in certain matchups, certain cards are not good. So those cards are just like by default ink. So like when you understand those things, it also makes the uninkable count higher because you're just, that in certain matchups, you're like, this is what I'm going to utilize. This is what I'm going to utilize. Or like, this isn't what I'm going to have. So it's like, once you get into the flow of your deck and you play enough games, you play enough reps, you actually can probably increase the, the uninkable count, in my opinion, if you wanted to. So I don't know.
I think in the long run of the game, the uninkable counts will go up.
Yeah,
to where they are now.
I think it's also just a natural ebb and flow of like most of the uninkable cards are really, really good and they're really, really powerful. So by default, every set we're going to get more powerful uninkable cards, and you're going to have to start making harder choices.
Right. I agree.
I see a lot of people in chat tonight. What's up, Clayton? What's up, Lorcana Cave? If you're hanging out, definitely say hello. And I'm actually really curious. This is something I've been talking with my wife about, actually. Viewers from like everywhere. So let me know where you're watching from tonight. Hit me up and let me know exactly where you're coming in from and how you're enjoying your Wednesday evening, or for all I know, Thursday morning. I have no idea. So our second question comes in, and it says, this is more of a complete opinion, but when will players start cosplaying at tournaments? And then if you had to cosplay as a Disney character at a Lorcana tournament, what would you cosplay as? I like the second part. The first part is easy. I think like people already did it, right? Like at Gen Con, we already had cosplayers. Yeah. I can guarantee you Miami is going to be, crazy. Like there's going to be plenty of cosplayers in Miami. So, but I like the second part of the question here. So Scott, if you had to choose, what would you cosplay as?
I don't know that I have an answer. I guess I'll just. I don't know that I haven't thought about this well enough. I don't know that I have an answer right now.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'd really have to think about it. Merlin,
I think
probably easy.
If I was just going for like what I feel like I could pull off, I'd probably go with like a Kristoff from Frozen for myself. It's like I have the hair, I could totally bundle up and all those things. If I wanted to really have fun and like, I don't know, really go out of the box, maybe I'd go for like Pinocchio or something like that. I don't know. That's where I would go. You could be a LeFou, all right?
Sure. I can be, what's his name? What's the guy's name? The one that played him in the
his actor name?
Josh,
I forget his name.
Josh, same guy that does Olaf or whatever.
Yeah, it's the same, literally the same guy. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah. Josh Gad or something.
Fun. All right, so this is a little more serious. What is something we can do to grow the community with issues of just being able to purchase product, turning people away? We had over 20 people at a lot of the local stores in the area. I mean, now it's dwindled down to 6. What can we ask our locals to do to help support the community while we are waiting for restocks?
So I guess I don't understand why someone would come in the beginning and then not come afterwards if the rest of the community all has no access to cards. So to me, it's probably an issue, honestly, with the 6 people showing up, playing too good a decks for the other 14 people in that situation to not be able to feel like they can compete because they don't have cards. Because I don't know why, if you came in the beginning and that's all you have access to, like, why wouldn't you just continue to like slowly increase the power of your deck through like trading, or just like, here, give me some more commons and uncommons, like give me some extra rares that you have, like whatever. So like, I don't know why those people would even feel like it matters. I don't know. I don't understand what the frustration, unless they're just bored of playing the same stuff like over and over again. Like if that's the case, then like just if you're one of the 6 players that has a ton of cards, like bring extra decks and let people play with them. Like I don't know why somebody should feel inferior in any way if they can either A, borrow cards from somebody else with, or B, like if everyone's in the same boat. I don't know what the big deal is.
Yeah, so there's definitely context missing from this particular question. So I kind of have to like play a devil's advocate of trying to figure out exactly what that is.
Sure.
From our perspective, locally, we really have like 2 stores that I know for sure that are within a half hour of me that are running weekly leagues. One of them has been successful. The other one has not been successful. Maybe it's the time of week that it's on. Maybe it is the boredom conversation. Maybe, there is enough people that want to play for more. I think the problem is, and this is honestly, I just think it's a problem literally everywhere, where stores just don't know how to handle Lorcana because it's like an anomaly. Because the demand for a brand new game is actually like significantly higher than most games. Like they don't understand, or they weren't willing to risk a time slot for the game, or they didn't get the product for the game, which is a whole other debate. But like I believe some of our stores now are trying to like do two things. They're trying to run a league and run tournaments. And so you're kind of like hitting both of your, your player bases. But I also think it goes to the extent of growing your community further and trying to host like even bigger events, like in a monthly aspect, or just something to build towards, because it could be a boredom thing, right? Like it could just be like, oh, I'm going the same week, same time. We're playing for like 6 to 10 points, and like maybe I'm getting a promo, and like maybe I'm getting a pack, like whatever. It's like, but if that's all you're doing all the time, then the competitive players like get bored very quickly. If it's the opposite, where you're playing for like high stakes every week, well, then your casual players like, well, I didn't get enough packs. I don't have a better way to build stuff. So like, I don't want to go and just get my stuff kicked in, right? So I think it's really about understanding that if you really want to succeed as a store, you likely have to have 2 days dedicated to Lorcana to bring in the most people. And then I would definitely be, I mean, I report on these every week, but like there's 40, 50, 60, 80 person tournaments all over the nation. Like,
Sure.
People are coming to these events. So like, if you're looking to get your store more known, then you could also commit to one of these other events, and like whether or not it's for an enchanted or for a box or literally for whatever, just enough of a reason for people to like drive an hour or drive 2 hours to play at your store on a Saturday. It also gives, more recognition to your store and a way to grow the community with that as well. So as far as like asking your LGS,
It's too late in my opinion at this point.
I don't even know that that's true, for one, but like in my humble opinion, it felt like in games of the past, Scott and I would have to go out of our way to make something happen within stores. And this is the opposite. I feel like we don't have to do anything at all, and the stores are just like they're just not capitalizing on it. And I know that that's not true for like every area, in the nation, in the world, etc. But we're hearing stores from everywhere being successful. So I think stores just have to honestly commit. I think the best thing you do is just ask your store to like, hey, like take a risk and see what happened. Like, and like the biggest thing too is like you don't have to like commit to something without saying we have to meet this requirement. Like if you want to hold a $500 tournament, you're like, okay, we're gonna hold a $500 tournament, but there has to be 25 players. Fine, like just do that. Like if there isn't 25 players, then make it a $300 tournament, like whatever it is. But you also have to be able to be like, all right, well, we wanted 25, but we got 50. Well, I mean, you should probably have it as a 1K at that point. But I just think that stores they got to be willing to take the risk, and I just reap the reward for the most of it.
If they're getting restocks in October, they need to be willing to set aside product for people that need it. So, and be willing not to like just immediately make a profit on it, and actually use it to cultivate the community also.
Yeah, we don't even need to spend any more time on that, because that's just that's just a dead horse at this point. I don't even, I don't even. I'm looking for a comment that was on one of our YouTube videos. I'm trying to find it real quick, because there was like a really good comment and it was really long, and I just didn't want to like respond in text. And I was like, man, I really could take this opportunity to like give it a good answer, and I just can't find it now, so I just suck. So there is what it is. I'll probably look for it throughout the night and try and answer it later on. But what's up, guys? Welcome, Adam. Welcome, Behold the Storm. And then what do we have here? We have Determined Doug. Just offered my players at my LGS on Discord to lend a deck. We're not getting 12 players in the tournaments because I think they may have been intimidated by Ruby Amethyst. I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, the problem is like you can't ask players not to play what they buy, right? So it's either you make a weird restriction, like you could always just do that. Like if you really wanted to try and cultivate community that way in a casual manner, you can be like, oh, you can only play commons and uncommons or something like that. Like you can do that, but just so we're clear, the moment you do that, there's still a best deck with commons and uncommons, and then it's just like the whole conversation all over again. But it could give players creativity for a week, etc. you know. All right. So we have a couple things we're going to break into tonight, a couple segments that we're going to be talking about. And the first segment we're going to be discussing are cards that should increase in playability in Rise of the Floodborn. Scott, we are, 6 weeks, yeah, give or take, something like that. A little over 6 weeks till release.
A little less. Yeah, right about 6 weeks.
Yeah, right about 6 weeks. So with that, it's always fun to look forward by kind of, addressing the present. And there's definitely cards that are in the present that we've been saying have needed support. Each and every set comes out, and we're going to get cards with, that can support these cards. So the first card we have here is Ariel Spectacular Singer. Now, which is comical because at the end of the day, this is a character, a storyborn hero princess that's already in arguably one of the best decks in the game. So it's comical to see that, like, oh, this is going to get even more support, and maybe you actually will start seeing this in other decks and things like that. So what about Spectacular Singer is the reasonings why this is a card that will just, evergreen get better?
I just think there's more and more songs in every set. So the more songs there are, the better those songs are, the more inkable songs there are, the more that she can hit with her musical debut ability, which makes her more consistent, gives her better card draw, helps the deck find the pieces that it needs, etc. And then the Singer 5 will probably also have more effect. I'm not positive that you're going to get a ton of literal 5-cost songs, but like even like a bunch of 4-cost songs would help her as well. And we didn't put Sebastian on here, but like that would be kind of the same theory, but his stat is good. So like to me, it's just literally every like song should be in every set, and I can't imagine there being like a better way of finding them built into a character than this. So I mean, she's always going to fit really well on Curve. And so, like, in terms of the song synergy, I just think she's 100% there. Again, like you said, like she's already seeing a ton of play as it is, but like to me, she'll just get better and better. And the other thing is she is a princess, so if we get additional princess energy that's beyond Moana, I think that she'll see additional play there as well.
So this is a common theme in Disney Lorcana that we didn't particularly get for this card, but her ability musical debut could very well likely end up on an action card.
Sure.
Would that action card be playable?
Depending
on cost.
If it costs like if it costs 1, yeah. If it costs 2, borderline. You'd probably have to see like an additional card if it costs 2.
So if it was 3 but looked at the top 5, we might consider it still.
Not if it costs 3, I wouldn't play it.
Not if it costs 3. So it's like 2 or less, period.
Yeah, because it's just not. You're giving up the ability to play a character, and I like it, the fact that it's built. This is built into a.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on Curve, decent statted character. Maybe, I mean, she's not like spectacular. No pun intended in terms of like stats, but she's not underpowered in my opinion.
Right.
Considering that she most of the time draws you a card, and it's a specific type of card that you generally want to be playing.
Right.
It's like the only song I know that sees play that you don't want to play is like Hakuna Matata, and then she's just there to get you specifically get you an ink.
That sees play, right? I would say there's a bunch of songs that aren't currently seeing play that
sure.
And for what it's worth, there will be more songs that won't see play. So
sure.
In every single set, I probably assume, I don't know, maybe a third of them will actually be like quote playable cards, with maybe some uptick like later on evergreen ability, like in a world where Sudden Chill becomes playable next set because of more discard, maybe, right? Like I don't know, who knows? Yeah. Hard to say. Obviously, the other notable card, Singer in general, should have been more of this. There's a slide a little bit further on that's kind of saying something similar, but like Cinderella as well. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only 3 singers, if I remember correctly. So her, Sebastian, and Cinderella. It's a keyword that likely we'll get more of also, so we'll have more characters that can sing, but like singer, songs, Ariel, that all just kind of meshes together. And then, like you said, additional princess synergy I don't even think it matters for this card. Like,
No.
even if she wasn't a princess, like she would probably still see play in Amber Princess decks just because you need to find your pieces with Be Our Guest and things like that anyway. So I don't even think that it matters.
Yeah, I mean, this is a card that basically was grossly undervalued from a privacy perspective, like when the game first launched, and basically until almost like the first couple weeks of the game,
Yeah.
regular versions were just way undervalued, and now I think I still think she's kind of a little undervalued, but at the same time, like there's other issues going on with like restocks and things like that. But I do think like overall, as a super rare, if you for some reason don't already have a playset of her, you should be picking her up.
Yeah. So financially, she's what? Like, is she $10-12 mark still somewhere in that area?
Yeah.
Do you think that this card has the potential to get to like Tinkerbell level?
The problem is I don't know that any cards at this point have the ability to do that because of yes, in terms of, but I do think cards in general will be coming down in price as come holiday time. So, and when a second set launches, etc. But I do think I think she has the ability to be in the whatever the upper tier of super rares is. So,
Okay.
I mean, I know
Yeah.
Tinkerbell's like almost like by herself, where she's priced at like
I
legendary
think
price.
she's probably by herself. Yeah.
Right. But whatever the
But I
next
guess
tier
so.
is, yeah.
So like the only counter is like right now Ariel is not in every Amber deck, where Tinkerbell is in every Steel deck. So
Sure.
do you think we'll get to a point where this card just becomes a staple to every Amber deck?
Given that we've already only seen one song so far in the second set, and it's Amber, I would say yes.
Okay, cool. Let's go to the next card. All right, so we have Ariel, another Ariel, of course, because why not? The Who's It Collector here.
I did alphabetical order. That's fine.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So this is let's move it over here just in case for anyone that just don't remember what this card does, because it is currently not seeing really any play. There was a lot of hype built around this card early on when spoiled. A lot of people trying to combo to the the Wombo combo to the moon, and people quickly realizing how difficult that actually was to pull off. So the look at this stuff ability of whenever you play an item, you may ready this character is an incredibly powerful card, because it's currently the only card in the game that when you ready this, she can still quest. So therefore, right there, she's standalone character by herself, and you're basically just saying this card will always get better because more items, more playable items will just come into the game, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, like the ones you have to play now that I've seen people play trying to make her work are just really not good and are basically being used just for this ability. And there isn't a ton of synergy there. I mean, like you have like Eye of the Fates and things like that, but it's expensive. So I feel like as more sets come out, it will not be. I think the way this card will actually work is a lot of cards are pushed, right? Like, so if you think about some cards in Rise of the Floodborn, like already, like you have like that Merlin, or you have like the Minnie Mouse that was just spoiled, etc. Like these are cards that you like are pushed. Like, so if there's a ton of cheap actions, on purpose in this set, that means okay, this is supposed to be working with Minnie Mouse. If there's a ton of bounce your own cards back to your hand in the same set as Merlin, that's on purpose. I think Ariel will eventually, like, you'll just naturally over time reach a critical mass of powerful, cheap items you want to play. Like if you look at like Rumi Amethyst decks playing like 7 items, for example, like I don't think that was like the way it was intended to be played, but that to me sets a precedent for okay, if we just continue to get more and more playable items that really she doesn't have to be the focus of the deck, but like once she's in play and next turn I can play like 3 good items that she's gonna interact with. Like to me, that's where I think like it's just gonna naturally happen. I don't think she's necessarily gonna be pushed, but it's just going to happen. Like okay, this set has one, then next set has another one, like whatever. But it might happen specifically in the set as well.
Well, so here's the other thing here. It doesn't even have to be items. Like a card like Cogsworth makes this card better, right? So because giving this character resist makes it harder to remove. Now it becomes more of a spot removal concept. Just having more threats in like the deck itself would cause her to get better, because it's not like when you're playing against this deck now, you're like, okay, the only thing that matters is Temeteo and
Right.
Ariel. Like,
Right.
so
Right.
like you're just like, I'm never gonna deal with anything else aside from these two cards, which means it's
Sure.
really easy. So the more threats at it also continue this. But the cool thing about that is Ruby Amethyst's weakness is like when the items get removed, they fall down and down. This, you don't really care. You're just like, I just need to play them. So like once they're in
Yeah.
play, I do my thing and I move on with life. And aside from like Eye of Fate, where that's like a critical part of this deck, you know, it is what it is. But I do think it's interesting. I think it's a card that, you know, we'll always go back and we'll always look to it like the beginning of every set. It's just another card that you're going to continuously look at and say, okay, is this the set that this is going to like break this character?
Yeah, we've also seen 3 instances of resist so far, which means her weakness is to smash. But if for some reason steel falls off a little bit because of, and then obviously I wouldn't say falls off. I would say if the steel removal falls off, because a lot of the good cards I've seen are in steel, they just are weak to resist. That'll help her biggest weakness to me, which is smash.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so this is it's funny because like it's like a pretty obvious thing, but it's also something that not everyone always considers. And we just literally just say it's not even a card; it's just floodborn characters. And the interesting about floodborn characters again is that this is just another evergreen effect that for the entirety of the game, whenever a character is made that costs less than this particular shift cost of a character, and maybe not even necessarily less than it, but just another playable version of it, I should say.
Sure.
We're always going to see these floodborn characters come back into play. We're always going to see them come back in and create this interesting thought in the meta game. Now, in set 1, you know, we saw several Tinkerbells, and we saw several Captain Hooks for that matter as well on this, but we only saw, you know, really one Stitch that you want to shift onto. The other one costs 6 also, so you're not, you know, really in that world. And we only saw one Jasmine. So like these are, you know, 2 cards that are definitely like on that uptick, but it's all of the floodborn characters. What is, especially now because it, like the set is legitimately called Rise of the Floodborn, I guess my question, you know, honestly to you is, do you think we will see, you know, another Jasmine, another Stitch, another Captain Hook because it was a focus of chapter 1? Or do you think this is actually something that we probably we have to wait a couple more sets for?
I think we might see another Jasmine. We might see another. That might be it. I mean, we already have a ton of Captain Hooks. We already have a ton of like Stitches throughout the curve. We might see one. I think we won't. Because we've already seen like a Cogsworth that's a Floodborn. We've already seen a Bell that's a Floodborn where it's like other characters maybe pushed. So I think it really just depends on like I think we will. I think characters that already have a ton of versions of themselves, we might not see additional of. It's just that because there's only one Jasmine, I can see it, but for the other
Yeah.
characters, I'm not so sure. I mean, we've already seen Bucky. We can't read his full text. We don't know his stats, but we know that there is some Floodborn synergy there, and I can't imagine in a set called Rise of the Floodborns that we're not going to see additional. So
I think it's just, I mean, what do we have? We have 12, right? 12 Floodborns in set 1.
yeah. We should see 12 again, I would imagine, but
I think you might see double that. We might see 24, right? I mean, I'm bad at this, and I was even bad at this going into chapter 1, but I haven't checked the rarities on all the new, is the new Cogsworth?
They're all super rare.
So they're still all super rares again?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. That's fair. So yeah, I guess if they're all going to be super rares again.
Bell was legendary. That's right.
So Bell's legendary. All right. So that has the opportunity to change the numbers then, because in this set all of them were super rares in chapter 1. So if we do see a legendary, if we do see rares, then you can definitely fit more in. So we'll have to just pay attention to that and see if that's
Minnie's
a rare.
She's a rare. Okay.
Yeah, so there you go. So right there,
we're definitely seeing more then.
Yeah, I think we'll probably see double. I would be shocked. I think it'll be 24, which would be my guess. Which is cool. Anything else to note, particularly about the Floodborn reasoning?
I think it's an ability that is being underused currently generally in the game, and I think whether or not there's synergy or not, just the fact that there will be more of them in general, One thing I think it will do is make decks more homogenous, because obviously you need a smaller version of the character in order to shift into it. But we'll see what happens in.
Oh, Jasmine's a rare. Duh. Never mind.
Oh, okay.
I'm like
There you
staring
go.
right at it,
It's
and
right
the
there on
Captain
the
Hooks are
screen,
rare.
yeah.
They're literally
And
floating
Captain
right in
Hooks
front of my face.
and Captain Hooks are rare too.
Shout out to Clayton. You got it, Clayton. You just
They're
they're literally right in front of my face. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still think that we'll probably see double. That's my guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely one of those things that as we get more options, and it's just the evergreen ability of it. Like, these characters will just always have it's the same thing as the Ariel. Like, every time there's a new one printed, you're just like, oh, like, can I make this one work now? Which I think is really, really interesting. But yeah, if you're hanging out in chat, let us know. Say hello. How you doing? Let us know if there's anything that we're missing. Obviously, we got some more stuff to cover, obviously. But if you have anything that you think is going to be better in Chapter 2, definitely let us know in the comments. So we have Hades, King of Olympus, which is ironically a shift character, and this sinister plot ability. So this character gets +1 for each other villain character you have in play, and the obvious reasoning for this card getting better is villains.
Yeah, more sets, more villains. Yeah,
right. So in set 1, we can both agree this card's unplayable, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, man, I still don't know. This guy costs a lot. Like, he costs so much. Shift 6 is like still a lot, and it's like a world where Be Prepared and Grab Your Swords still aren't good somehow. So yes, I agree that like it's gonna get better, but I still don't know that it's good enough.
I mean, we need like a 5 or 6 cost. We need like a 4 or 5 cost Hades as well.
We have a 4. We need one that's inkable, right? Like, we need an inkable Hades.
Yeah, he's rare floodborn also. Yes, that's true. So yeah,
all the unplayable ones, but I can't remember.
All super rares. Yeah, I mean, you need a world where, I mean, there's already with Zero to Hero, you're already a situation where going wide is better,
right?
For specifically that card. So if we do ever live in a world where going wide is better, and you can go wide with villains, then, and one of them is some type of Hades, if he comes into play and has like the ability to act right away and can gain you like 4 or 5 out of a character immediately, then it's a totally different story. So there's potential there. We haven't seen it yet. Like, the only villain I think we've even seen so far is the second queen, and she still costs a lot too.
Yeah.
So although she wants to go wide as well. So I think it just comes down to whether or not.
So I mean, that helps.
Right. I think it just comes down to whether or not like there is another Hades that's printed that is inkable, and whether or not we're getting any additional support in the film.
Yeah. For me, the big problem is like the uninkable count gets really high, and like when it doesn't go as planned, you just you end up with this 8 cost dude that like you can't use, and I think that's the problem. It's like, so like when this card is bad, it is really, really bad because A, it costs 8. B, if you have no other cards in play, you're now paying 8 for a 1 lore character. So like that's my problem. Is like I feel like it's gonna get better, but it's gonna need like a lot of help to stay relevant and like actually his ability to actually matter. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Like, resist is great. It's gonna help with all these things, but I don't know. I don't see it yet. It needs help. It needs a lot of help.
It's possible all he has to connect one time though, and then you win. That's the issue.
Maybe it just feels like this is way more difficult to do than like just playing like Bell in Sapphire. Like it's kind of the same synergy, like kind of the same thing where it's like I need to get to this critical mass number, but Bell just lets you do it, whereas Hades is like all dependent on what your opponent is doing.
Sure.
So I'm never a fan of those cards. I'm never a fan of like hoping my opponent doesn't have an answer to what I'm doing.
Sure.
Like I'm not about it. So
Sure.
I think for me, this is like the first card that I'm just like, yeah, but no.
It's fine.
This is also a gift set card, so there's no chance of financial upgrades for this one, right? Like,
right.
This
you can't play the big card version. So,
damn, we can't play the big card. Whatever am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Whatever. Is what it is. So, all right. Our next card is Moana. So you already have 4 princesses spoiled so far. Fair. Even with resist, keeping them alive, being ready will be very valuable to keeping them around. And then Tiana is especially important to keep the princesses around since actions are shut down. So I think that's the big thing, right? Is that Moana, granted, is like the worst challenger ever. And she normally just gets completely torn away. But the bigger issue is like trying to quote set up the Moana turn is really difficult because you like they can just Dragonfire and move on with life. At least with this, there's like alternate protection, and there's also like again, this goes back to like there's more cards that are like just more valuable. Similar to the Ariel, where like this card is just like this card is as good as everything else is in play, but when everything else is in play is better than this card, then this card actually looks a little bit better. So we'll have to see.
Right.
But Cinderella and Tiana are they're both very good cards. So like we're already looking at potential great shift targets. Now neither did we get a new Cinderella yet? Or no?
2-drop.
What was the 2-drop? That's right. From the promo, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, right there you'll see more of that, I guess. And it works in Amber, so you can also have the 4-cost Cinderella that is going to have the potential for shifting. But what else? Since we're here, what else do you think princesses really need? Like is Moana like her ability is very good because it like protects your card from challenging, but is it really enough? You think?
No, they need like an action card or something like that gives them synergy. They need like some type of. I mean, Moana to me is pretty criminally underplayed, to be honest with you, because I think people are just trying to be too all in on it. But I mean, like, if you just, I mean, people are playing Shield of Virtue, so like, why wouldn't you play like a Shield of Virtue that gains you 3 lore? Like, even if they have to send all, I think the problem is people are like, you can just send, I can just send my characters into Moana. I mean, and she just immediately gets banished. But the problem is, unless they're playing Maui, it's very difficult to sees a lot of play, and where we am at this, like, you have to send multiple characters into her, and if they're going to send multiple characters into her, then it's just as effective as them not gaining lore either. So if she's able to save like the Rapunzels and things like that, and then eat up the entire turn from your opponent of not questing, it's just as good as like them swinging into other guys anyway. So I think like 3 lore is a lot out of a character that also like saves your other characters and just forces them to basically be in a situation where it's like, we have to take this character out. I have no choice. I'm like any 2 lore character that swings into her is complete bonus for you. They send a bunch of 1 lore characters into her. It's fine. They're not doing anything else. And like, they're not like, they have to take her out. So they have to wind up exerted regardless. I think people have always just thought like I have to be all in on this character, but it's like if you just play like Rapunzel and then you get to ready her, like that's fine. She's still a 3 lore character for 5, which is basically what Maleficent is with slightly worse stats.
Right.
And a lot of people just run all their characters Maleficent. Now, granted, that 3 strength will take out characters. Don't get me wrong. I understand there's a difference, but like there's still a lot of tempo gain by trying to take her out. So I think that like the 2 characters that are there, we've already seen in the set, clearly want to be. I mean, the Cinderella readying is ridiculous when she can, especially if you can sing a song with somebody else or her and then ready her. Like even if it's only Moana able to actually quest, and then Cinderella can sing a song, or you can play out of your hand, and then Cinderella can like take out 2 characters like that are unexerted. So
my addition to it was going to be like it's the same conversation with songs. Like this
Right.
card actually gets better with songs, because anything that I'm not really all about just like, oh, I get to ready my characters protect from challenges. Like that's nice, but I would much rather be able to do something else with them. Like for me, I always like enjoyed Moana as the idea that I can I can almost come from behind in a way where I'm like, oh, now I can use my princesses like double challenges and things like that to like even the board up. But if there's more songs to be sung and you can now sing, swing, or like, quest, ready, and then sing songs and get more leverage, like even more value out of it that way, that's where I start looking at it, like going, okay, like what Amber song needs, like what other Amber songs need to be out there for me to like really buy into the Moana strategy. And what else? I obviously would steal, they already have it. Like if princesses, like if I don't know that this will actually happen, but if Amber Steel just turns into like the default princesses deck rather than like the mid-range deck we're looking at, just because it has all the best songs and can utilize cards like Cinderella and cards like Ariel and things like that, it might not shock me at all if Moana just becomes a mainstay in that deck moving forward.
She's not super expensive, so it's like as long as like, and like she's not. I think in the decks that try to like over abuse her, like she just gets taken out of combat before she can swing. But if she's just another threat that's on board, like then they have to make a choice.
It's fair. I appreciate this comment. She's okay, but she's not that good. That's
right. I mean, that's what right now, but I think she'll get better. Right?
That's how I feel about the majority of these cards. Like she's okay, but she's not that good. I totally respect this.
Yeah.
All right. So this next card, I respect I respect it here, Scott. I do. Tell me about Plasma Blaster.
So we've already seen. We don't know what type of damage Robin Hood can do. It's another uninkable, unfortunately. I assume he's just like a prodigal sorcerer for Magic, like just does one. I think it might say like to an opposing character or something like that. I don't know what his stats are going to be, but at some point, these type of abilities will hit a critical mass where if you have an onboard constant ability to use this card over and over again every single turn, I think that there's a lot of value. If the game gets to a point where you can slow down and take turns off and you have these multiple like machine guns, for lack of a better term, that are in play, the damage will just start to add up. And it's obviously a lot harder to take out an item than it is to take out a character. So I think Robin Hood will be good, but if he's not like a 1/3 or something like that, like he's not going to be like, if he's like a 1/2 or something like that, like he's probably not going to be able to survive combat very well. But if he is like a 1/3, like I think you can just start to get to a point where you just have enough of these types of chaining abilities where if the game slows down to a point where you have the two extra ink to be able to use every turn, I think this card can see more play than the 0 it's seeing now. And I know some people have tried to use it, but it is an item which we've talked about a lot of item synergy in the past. And I do think that like if the game slows down, obviously it's terrible against resist. So you have to also there's no resist. But I do think if we have more and more of these abilities and Steel is able to slow the game down into a more controlling deck instead of a more mid-range deck, I think this card could see more play.
Okay. Yeah, my big worry obviously is just resist might be since we've already seen it on so many cards, like there's a chance that it's just a big keyword in the set in general, and maybe that's just like a flat by design because of the way set one, like the way the chapter 1 was built. I just fear that like these cards will just not like end up not being playable, and it's worse because we've talked about cards in the, like before where in a bad matchup you can just ink them. Well, like in bad matchups you can't ink these cards, which means they're just like utterly dead weight in like more often than not. And I think that's what's going to inevitably like hold them down. If they were inkable, they would be auto includes. So I think that's the problem here is that Steel already has a hefty uninkable package.
Fair.
So like for like the ability to like, say that this card's better than I don't know, like Fire the Cannons is like a pretty tough thing to like commit to. And I think that's where I'm at is like, again, we're talking about more uninkable cards that are coming. I don't know that like Robin Hood is going to be the demanding answer unless that card says like deal 1 damage to each opposing character or some crap like that. Like that, fine. aside from that, it might be exerted character, it might just be opposing character, like you said, it could just be whatever. But yeah, it's tough for me to like get on board when they're already pushing a keyword that actively like stops both of these cards.
It's possible. Then it just needs to be power corrupt, and at that point, it won't see any play anyway. So
yeah. Well, if it was inkable, you'd play it. You would definitely it would be in decks right now if it was inkable, for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, all right. This is the more comical one. But it's warranted, right? Like this is like it's kind of funny because we talk about like what princesses need and what villains need, but like this is the opposite. This is like, well, if they do get out of hand, we have these cards that are already built into the game, which is great. And we've already seen Poison Apple in some Ruby Amethyst decks already. So which is notable to say, but so Poison Apple and Sword of Truth, they're just a reverse effect of, well, if there's better princesses in the world, if there's better villains in the world, then I have an item that can just sit and play and be utilized when it's necessary. And these are the same thing. It's the same evergreen effect, right? Like, granted, both these cards are uninkable. At least the apple is playable all the time, right? Yeah, the apple always does something. The sword does not.
Correct.
And the sword costs more for what it's worth as well. So
it doesn't have an activation code.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's fair. So they effectively cost the same, but the sword can just end up not being good at all. I don't know. You like, it's hard to say not because we're already seeing them in the decks, but Ruby is another one where their uninkable count is like high. So in what numbers do you think these cards might end up seeing play in Ruby decks?
Monos.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So it's a mediocre thing.
I mean, it depends on whether or not it's a better option than Dragonfire. So, like, obviously, if there's item synergy, it's one thing, but it's proactive versus reactive. Like, these literally just sit in play, and the effect on your opponent of like, well, I'll play out my 4-drop Hades to get back a card. I'm not going to waste Sword of Truth on that. Like, can you really ever play anything larger that's a villain or a princess? Like, it's staring at you right in the face. It's just going to be taken out. Like, so at some point, like, you might have wasted turn 3 or you might have wasted turn 4, but they're going to waste like turn 7 on Hades. Or obviously, I know he took something out, but like, that's not what you want to be getting out of a 7-drop. Like, you certainly don't want to be Maleficent Dragoning something, taking something out, and then getting that Sword of Truth, like, on, and things like that. So, like,
flavorful.
You certainly don't want to be Cinderellaing 7-drop when there's a Poison Apple in play and things like that. So, like, it sets up a situation. If you can afford to take the turns off to put these things out, they're going to have like massive effect on when those cards are being played later. Of course, I'd rather have them. I think as long as there's. But the other thing is, like, if you look at it, like Cinderella, the new 2-cost Cinderella, draw cards a card just like the 1-cost Simba. If we have more looting effects like that, where we draw and discard cards, like that's the equivalent of being able to ink other things. So if we have the ability to sift through more cards, or like be our guest for an item or something like that, like these cards play. Period.
Yeah.
Whether they're inkable or not.
Yeah, I could definitely see like a spectacular singer for items.
Right.
I don't see why not. So
right.
I could see that. I don't know that it would be in Ruby for what it's worth, but
yeah, that's fair.
It's interesting to consider. Obviously the Tamateo is an option. Yeah, the sifting thing is a really good comment. I think that's something that's probably underutilized or not considered, is that like that is a way to get rid of these dead cards, similar to the Plasma Burst, the Plasma Blaster and things like that. So I could see it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough because I really like Poison Apple in the end because at least you definitely can get something out of it. The Sword of Truth, until we see deck lists and understand exactly what type of value we can get out of it, like above curve or even on curve, that will be like probably the final nail in the coffin to see if that card's actually playable. We'll have to see. Let's just put it there right now. Do you think there's a world right now that you're playing these cards in Ruby Amethyst?
Yeah, because I mean, we see way more Rapunzels than we saw in the past. See way more. It depends on like there aren't enough villain like all other than the dragon. Like there's like 7-drop Hades. You're and there's like 5-drop Maleficent. Always going to be trading down a lot of times right now with Sword of Truth.
Yeah, like
There's
you have
Queen.
Hans and Mad Hatter.
Yeah, that Mad Hatter's.
I'm pretty sure Mad Hatter's a villain.
I didn't think he was.
Maybe not. I think he's a villain.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Definitely
like
Hans is definitely
Hans is on. But you can't really look at it like, John Silver's also.
John Silver's a good one.
Yeah. It's not really about trading on curve. It's about having the ability to take off a turn to have it literally just sit and play.
Sure.
So if you can do that, and it really comes down to like if there's more draw and discard that, I think these cards can see more play.
Mad Hatter is nothing. Neither hero nor villain. There you go. All right.
He's
just story. He's literally just storyborn. That's it.
He's crazy. That's the point.
Fair enough.
A reason of insanity. That's the point.
But yeah, I mean, I guess Mother Gothel, John Silver, like these are cards that you can definitely trade up to. A lot of cards you can trade down to, which is like not what you want to be doing. But so yeah. Okay. All right. Lots of chatter in chat right now. So we have 26-8 at locals. Oh, we're just talking about stats at locals. Congrats. Shout out to Jordan Snowdom on Facebook. What's up? How you doing? Thank you, First to 20, for confirming that I don't know what I'm talking about all the time. And then there you go. You played two ofs in Ruby Steel Mill. Okay. All right.
I mean, the one thing I'll say in general when I was making this list, I think that's the end of it, right?
No, isn't there one more?
Oh, my bad. Oh, that's right.
One more.
All right. Yeah, I'll wait till the end.
One more.
Yeah.
One more card. Okay, so we have Taka Heartless, and I'm just gonna just pitch it right back to you. What I like the reasoning here, but I think it's a little more in depth than I was actually prepared for on this particular card. So, like Taka replacing Tinkerbell is a preposterous concept, but your reasoning for it is fair.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if there's a ton of resist and it doesn't add to the cost of the cards, that's the big thing. Like if you had like a 2/2 for 1 with resist, whatever. Like, if it was built in the character's cost built like automatically to where it just becomes not advantageous to be running as many Tinkerbells. Mm-hmm. I think Taka to being able to push trading on board and still gaining you lore instead of having to force you to make that decision, it's powerful. I think the only reason he's not seeing, I don't know if it's a he, sorry. The only reason it's not seeing play now.
Fairly confident it's female.
Yeah, okay. The only reason it's not seeing play now is because how good Tinkerbell is.
Right.
Because to me, this card is still like a best of both worlds. Like you're still clearing the board and gaining lore. Mm-hmm. So there's a Simba that already has that ability, but is pretty terrible.
I mean, he's literally an uninkable 3/5. He's terrible. Right. It's so bad.
So it's possible that like there's ways of using this now if you can fit more 6-drops in your deck that you should. It's just that like this card doesn't sit and play long enough because usually like you just wipe the board and then whatever, you move on with life, and it's not getting enough advantage. But again, if resist is so big that like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to play Tinkerbell, I think the fact that it's a 5/5 and still is able to affect the board and gain you lore as time goes on, this type of ability will be very important. And it's because we've already seen 2 cards of this type of ability, it's possible that there'll be more, and then this will be a side ability of what Steel can do.
Fair. If you're hanging out in the comments, you're enjoying this conversation, then hit that like button for me. Let us know if there's something we missed. Those are the cards we have for that particular segment. Scott, what did you want to say about the particular list that you built today or yesterday?
I think the set was designed very well to where it is very synergistic with itself, and I don't know that a lot of like breadcrumbs that were out there other than what we've already listed. I mean, like, am I going to sit here and say Rapunzel's going to get better because there's more resist? Like, sure. Like, do you want me to put that on the list? Like, do you want me to put like a top 3 card in the set on the list? Like, do you want me to,
Sure.
I actually think I think more cards will get worse when you expand the pool of what's available in the metagame and double it
Mhm.
more than cards getting better simply because there's a lot of like borderline terrible cards that you have to play right now that you won't see play in the future when they even if you just think about like other vanillas and things like that. Like I just think that in general less cards will see play out of the set than a bunch of cards now that just aren't seeing enough play and will be pushed later. I could have made this like a 5 card list in my opinion. I just stretched out a little bit. But it's hard.
Yeah, ironically, in our next segment, I think I have cards on my list that you could argue also get better in the set too. So I won't attribute to them now. Just catch it in the next segment out here. But um, I think it's tough. I think it's one of those where a lot of these cards have those Easter eggs. It has that, the evergreen effect, the evergreen ability on cards is something that you will always constantly go back to. Like the one that I don't have on here is like Jetsam and Flotsam, right? Like there's no telling that we're going to get more of those cards,
Yeah,
but they are an evergreen character that technically for all of eternity you'll be able to look back at and say, oh, there's a new Jetsam. There's a new, I can try this again. So we'll have to see if I don't think we're going to get them, but they will definitely exist moving on. Same thing with the Amethyst Tinkerbell, right? If there's more Peter Pans, maybe this is a thing. Starsky, with the captains and things like that. So there's a lot of things that like we didn't bring up, but they're also like niche, even a little more niche than what we did bring up. So I think that's why like I didn't include them or even add on, and this is why we're kind of closing it with it. But there is more. It's just a matter of like what is a real requirement to put a card over. And I think some of the cards on the list today require more than others, which I think is interesting. But all in all, anything else for this particular section here?
No.
Anyone else gonna hit us here? No. All right. So let's gonna go on to segment 2. We're gonna get rid of this one. And I'm labeling this are you playing these cards? There's 6 of them here. We're gonna run through them. And these are 6 cards that I think it's 1 per ink. And I think they're cards that either are in certain decks, but they're absolutely not in enough decks. So our first card is Megara. So Megara is almost exclusively played in Emerald Amethyst decks. It's really hard to find her anywhere else. And my opinion is that you should be playing this in all your Emerald decks. So this is a character that like just does so much at a 2 cost, and her biggest fault is that you almost never want to play her on turn 2. And I think that's maybe the reason why you're not seeing more of this card. Unless you're on the draw, playing against Amber with Protective Cubs and you have Olaf, like that's the only time you really want to see this card on turn 2. Aside from that, this card is way closer to like, honestly, it's probably like a turn 4 or a turn 5 most of the time. And I think maybe that's why more people aren't seeing it, but she's inkable. So like, just, if you don't need her on turn 2 or turn 3 or even turn 4, she's the perfect card to ink. But when you have the opportunity to blow your opponent out with a random +2, that's incredible. The other concept here, this will be more of a how will it stack in the ruling world, but in a world where we get more cards that like increase, Dreamborn strength or something like that. Oh no, this does say specifically +2. I thought it said her, so never mind. Not the same, but it's more or less the effect that this card allows all of your lower curve cards to trade up. It allows cards like Cheshire Cat and, when in doubt, a Cusco or a Mad Hatter if you have to. A Hans going to 5 power can make a difference also. Like they're plays that your opponent just never expects you to make. And sometimes when you literally just make them, your opponent's like, wait a minute, like what just happened? And I think that's what this card creates. It creates this like flip the script play that most players are never planning for. And that's why I think it just needs to be played more Emerald decks.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can even I see a lot of lists to play like 3 of them, 2 of them. Like if you played 4 of them, not only is she like you said ink, but like you can have a situation where you can play 2 of them in the same turn
Yeah.
in the late game. And like can you imagine like Rapunzel becomes a 5/5? Like,
Pretty good.
like things
It's
like
pretty good.
that. So,
Yeah.
I think I don't think her stats matter. Like
No.
I understand that she gets like mowed down by AoE, but like her so I mean, yes, she's collateral damage to a lot of this AoE and stuff like that, but like so is any 2-drop that you play. So like Flynn Rider gets AoE down by grab your swords also. So like we
Right.
not play him, like like so yeah, I think she's very good.
Yeah. I think she's criminally underplayed, in all honesty.
I mean, we've reached a point where people don't want to keep damage characters in play because of Rapunzel,
Right.
and so like I prefer to put put the damage output on characters above like to the critical level. I think is really important.
Yeah. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at too. All right. So our second card here is Krunk, and to go back to the last segment, I think Krunk could also just be played over Taka because again, if like resist comes into play, then you're like your Taka is a 6 cost with only 4 strength realistically or less. And although and at the end of the day, it's also a 5/5. I think this like
Sure.
6 cost 6/6 inkable with 2 lore trades with like Elsa, Aladdin, and Lives. Like honestly, a very fair portion of the current metagame. This guy just lives. Like he just he just hangs around. So like this is a card that I see a lot of decks trying to go higher in like the mid range, like Amber Steel decks, right? Like when I wrote Nowhere, it was a little bit of a joke. I know I've seen this like maybe in one of the Amber Steel decks that have top 8 it, like literally maybe one of them. Aside from that, it's not seeing much play whatsoever. But like, I do think that Amber Steel, the Amber Steel mid range deck could utilize this card. The Sapphire Steel decks can utilize this card. Emerald Steel decks can use this card. And honestly, a deck that we haven't seen in a couple weeks, Amethyst Steel can utilize this card. Like his potential and challenging is so great that he just gets to live to tell the tale. Like he is the ultimate right hand man, in all honesty, because there's just not a lot of cards to trade with him on par, and most of them are going to be after he does something. So, like, I don't care if Maui comes in and gets rid of this guy. It's like I've already removed something from play, probably. Like I'm already ahead. So
Sure.
I don't know. I think this is one of the cards that at 6 costs for what he's doing, what he's representing, everyone mostly looks at that and goes, "Oh, he's a vanilla and he's not good." But when you start realizing that he can just flat out take certain characters out of the game and like force really awkward trades for your opponents, he's a really underplayed character.
It's just an effect of like Ruby Amethyst poisoning people's minds that like you can't play a character that costs over Dragon Fired away, but like that deck is seeing less play. I mean, he helps you things like Ursula and things like that. Like he still represents a card that they need to take out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a critical mass of cards they need to take out, like you're gonna have run.
Right.
So like an empty board, again, like you said, like sure Maui can take him out, but Maui's probably gone from the hand. Like they play so many uninkables that chances are they might not have 2 of them or something like that. So like I don't know. He represents a pretty decent threat, and against a large swath of the rest of the meta, probably going to get you like a 3-for-1.
Yeah.
Easily. So
yeah, I mean, like in the mirror, this card's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're looking for like a card out of the deck to be like to leverage mirror play, because if you like Amber Steel might keep going up in popularity, this card's real good in the mirror. Like just like doesn't instantly die to Tinkerbell. Like the double grab your swords play, he's still hanging out. Like he's just there. He requires a lot, and he also fills the void of sometimes it's really hard for you to like swing up with a lot of strength This guy just has 6 strength, like on an inkable character. When he's bad, send him the inkwell, whatever. When he's good, he's going to be dominating.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
All right, so our next card is Cinderella, Gentle and Kind. This is the first one on here where I actually like. People ask me all the time, I don't have Rapunzel's, what do I do? And this is sadly, this is not Rapunzel, right? Like it's not.
No.
But the Singer 5 ability does make this card unique. It does allow you to do really fun things early on in the game. And then, the Wonderful Dream, like that's, you're never doing that, if I'm being honest. Like I would be shocked if that's what you end up doing with this card.
Ever.
I'm not saying that I haven't seen it happen, but I'm saying you probably shouldn't do it. And 2 lore is almost worth it most times. But yeah, I've seen this very occasional in like the aggro Amber Steel decks that like honestly, like I think this was like really early on where people just didn't have Rapunzel's yet. And then they just realized that Rapunzel's just a good card all the time, regardless of it. But if you're looking for a budget option to, specifically to Rapunzel, then this card is great. If you're looking for another way to sing cards, like this is the same thing, like the same argument of, not playing Rockstar Stitch, or like in the Amber Sapphire decks that aren't playing Ariel. This is another way to like sing Let It Go and still have like a full turn on turn 5 and things like that. So I think there's some niche playability. I don't think this card's like ever a 4 of, like not in that kind. For what it's worth, I don't think any of the cards so far that I've spoken about are like straight 4 ofs, other than like Megara is a difference maker. But most of the cards in this list are just like niche things that you should attempt to include in your decks. And I think this is one of them that like, it's a 2/5 with 2 lore. It costs 4. It has the ability to like exert up to 5 for, the Grab Your Swords, A Whole New World, Let It Goes. The list goes deeper. Like eventually will go deeper. It's another card that over time, we talked about the Singer, will just get better. But do you think that like this card could see more play, more commonly, or you just think it's just too budget for the most part?
No, I think it's good. I think it's a good backup to. I mean, it's she just suffers from really. I mean, to be honest with you. But I mean, 5 willpower is a lot. 2 is, I mean, she's not there to challenge. She's there to be challenged. So 2 is not insignificant when you're playing in a deck with Tinkerbell. Like any damage you can do is decent damage. This is my argument for Moana earlier, that we talked about. So to me, I mean, 5 is a lot of willpower, and 2 lore is. I mean, this is better than a 3/4/2, in my opinion.
Sure.
So like, if you want a decent mid-range threat that like isn't insignificant, I mean, like she survives combat with power characters, etc. Like I think she's fine. I think she's a decent character on curve. Even in aggro decks, like 5, like again, in Lorcana, the willpower stat is more of the aggro stat than because it keeps you around and allows you to quest more. And 5 is a lot.
Right.
And if you're on the play, she should be able to swing at least twice, and you're getting value out of it. So,
right. Yeah, I think I just think it's one of those ones that we just we don't see enough. In all honesty, so if you are hanging out tonight and you haven't yet, smash the like button for me. If you're watching the video after the fact, comment, let me know your opinions of the current cards going on, and we're talking about. And we got 3 more to go here. Scott, we have White Rabbit's Pocket Watch. Now, this is another card that I was going to specifically mention, in the last segment about cards that get better. This card absolutely gets better, right? Like every time a new character gets printed, this card gets better. But you look around the landscape and people have come to the realization that this card is like a necessary evil in Ruby Amethyst. Why is it not seeing more play outside of Ruby Amethyst?
I mean, I don't know what Amethyst can really do if you don't play this card. Only have Rafiki? Like, I don't really know what else it can do. So I think the reason why it doesn't see a lot of play outside of Ruby Amethyst is because everyone just thinks of like the Aladdin play.
Yeah.
But in reality, like again, if you can afford to take the turn off, and necessarily have to be a full turn. If you can afford to take most of a turn off, I would assume 3 ink. Like from now on, you like every card you play represents a threat. Like if you play Elsa on 9, she's probably going to take out something like
Yeah.
as she exerts them down. So to me, like I mean, sure, is Ursula going to do a whole lot with her 2 strength? Like probably not. But like you're playing some other uh color. So whether it's ruby or whether it's steel, whether it's whatever. To me, this is a premium amethyst card.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like in my opinion, any amethyst deck should be running this. Is a reason you run out. That's like I think Gaston is a premium ruby card, for example. Like it's just not something you think about because you're like doesn't cost like isn't legendary and doesn't have 3
Right.
lore or whatever. But to me, this is like a reason to play amethyst.
Yeah. So a lot of the other conversations I've had is like decks like Emerald Amethyst are really bad on the draw, right? And I get it. It's not. They're bad on the draw because they only have one linear play, right? Like it really is just like play my guy, turn it sideways, and make my opponent like interact with me, which is a great strategy on the play. But on the draw, they're just like there's no way for them to get ahead in most cases. This is a type of card that later on in the game, when you drop, your John Silvers, or your genies or things like that, explicitly like genies and Tinkerbells, and utilizing evasive to like keep guys around after the fact, they're perfectly prime targets for White Rabbit's Pocket Watch. Like the fact that you can just be like, oh, I'm gonna, play my Tink, give something evasive, and then like I can use my evasive Tink to take out a lower card, or I can use my evasive genie to take out a lower card, and now they don't have an evasive character to interact with my genie. They have to have burn, or the damage on my card doesn't matter anyway, right? Like, if anytime I can get more out of a card that already has a come into play effect, I'm all for it. The same thing with John Silver. Like, it's not super ideal because that means they're likely just going to run into your John Silver. But if they have to like run into your John Silver and you still get to protect like your Cusco or your Mad Hatter or something like that represents more lore over the course of the game, I'd rather use my 5/5 John Silver to get rid of a card and give something, the ability. I think it's a card that like Amethyst Emerald players should seriously consider playing. It's also a card that I would definitely be considering playing again, like in the steel decks. Like this is a card that, all right, Tinkerbell on turn 7's okay if I don't need to shift and give a rush. I just have Pocket Watch to effectively give it to her also, right? Like it's just another line of play. So this is a card like, granted, I think there's an entire video on the channel about this. It was either a short or a video. It was from months ago, but like there's an entire video about this card and how good I thought it was 3 months ago. And my attitude doesn't change whatsoever. This card's phenomenal. Like it's play more of it, guys. Just play more of this card.
And we know it sees play in one of the top decks already, but it's in the other decks that should
It's like it's literally in Ruby Amethyst and then nowhere else to be found. I don't get it. I don't get it. All right, so here's my last one, and this is the first one. It's like cheating. It's 2 of them.
No, I know what you're saying.
Obviously, Jasmine is one of those Floodborn characters that I think she just honestly hasn't found a place. And for me, I tested her a couple weeks ago in the Emerald Sapphire deck that was posted originally by First to 20. And I threw her in there because, honestly, I listen, right? I watch other content. I listen to people. And they're saying his thing was he didn't want to go above 5 ink. And I'm like, okay, well, like what else can I play for 5 ink then? And that's why I looked, and his deck, I believe, already had Jasmine in it. I was like, let me just try Floodborn Jasmine. And what I really like about this card is I think something that people aren't used to doing. So my play line for this card throughout the league games I was playing was I was actually utilizing Jasmine as a challenger. So I would challenge with baby Jasmine. I would remove whatever 2/2 or 2/1 or whatever, or 2/3, whatever was just left hanging around. And then I would actually shift out Queen of Agrabah on top of her and repair her. And now on turn 3, on turn 4, you effectively have this 2/5 character that, you know, there aren't a whole lot of cards in the game that can remove a full health character on 2/5. So you end up getting the ability anyway, but it also now lets you utilize, and this was specifically in certain decks, right? But like it lets you utilize cards like Rafiki or Zeus even better, because now on the following turn you can utilize you know, a rushing Rafiki or rushing Zeus, and then you could quest with Jasmine and repair them. So I think this is just a line of play that like people aren't recognizing, and they're not like taking advantage of this actual ability. And I think that this is honestly like a criminally underplayed card as well. And having to play a 3-cost 3/3 with 2 lore is like not much of a penalty, right?
You know, I think some of the underutilized shifters are underplayed as it is, and she's definitely one of them. Because everything like a lot of people look at shift and they think card disadvantage, whereas I look at it like tempo advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if like the 3/3 is dead on board because they have like a 3/4, I'm just using stats. Like
Sure,
it doesn't really matter. Like
the wardrobe,
right, like if you just became a 2, like if the card's dead anyway, then it's just better to be a 2/5 in that situation that can constantly heal, like that has additional abilities over and above what it already had. Like if she's already just dead, then you might as well just make her better, who can now sing, etc. Where you're really only paying the 3 for it. Like I understand you're paying like 6 over the course, but you can't look at it like that. You have to look at it like each turn being like its own individual thing. And the play line that you mentioned is just like an insane play line where you have no disadvantage whatsoever, where all she is basically, again, exerted to be, you know, Maui'd away or something like that. But that's really like what people are thinking about. If she's able to stay in play against non-Ruby decks, um, like she represents a threat that again has to be taken out all in one turn, or else she's probably never going to be out for a very, very long time, because she's constantly like just removing damage from your entire board every single turn, doing what she wants to be doing. Like I don't think she wants to be. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't think she wants to be challenging most of the time. So she's just going to constantly be, you know, taking damage off all your characters from then on out. So she has a very, very powerful ability. I think it's just that, again, the meta game was just so over, like it just Ruby Amethyst was just so over it that like it became like I can't play 5-drops that can't compete with Maui, which there's none of, and things like that. So
right. I mean, Maui's just an anomaly. Like,
right.
What are you gonna do? Like,
yeah,
it's the same thing as Dragonfire, right? Like, I get it. Like, yeah, these cards exist, but eventually you get to a point, and I think we can mostly close on this. Like, the way the meta has been shifting, it obviously there still has been successful Ruby Amethyst decks, but you're starting to see kinks in the armor finally. Like, there's been decks, there's been line of play, there's been, you know, all these sorts of things are kinking the armor finally. And if we start seeing less and less of them, then you have the ability to try out new things that you knew were bad into one thing but good into like the majority of other things. And I think that's important, is that particularly in particular, this card's great in against the steel decks. You know, like if they just leave lingering damage around because they're like, oh, I'll just pick it off with a smash, or I'll pick it off with a fire of the can, whatever. You're just like, well, drop my Jasmine and erase your whole turn, and thanks for hanging out with me. You know, so
and it's a coming into play ability, not just a quest ability.
right.
So it's not just like that 4-cost Hans that you have to with, which is good, but like this is like, you know, if you shift her, you can heal like 4 damage.
Yeah.
Like very easily. Like,
yeah.
Without a doubt, without even like your play line of like taking out something and then healing them. Like you can literally just heal 4 off guys all the time. Now again, you are repeating, you're competing with things. I think there is play for her to see. There is room for her to see play in the metagame.
Yeah. I mean, I think, don't get me wrong, like this is, granted, we talked about it already with the Floodborn thing, but it's like it's just another thing where Floodborns as a whole are probably underplayed. And she is definitely, in my opinion, one of the top of the list, because her ability is just very it's like it's awkward because we talk about a lot of times where you just don't have this damage like floating around and things like that. but you can set yourself up. You can literally set yourself up to have the damage, to take advantage, to put yourself in a better board state. And then like on top of that, you're just like, oh, now not only am I in a better board state, but now I have this new threat that like they have to worry about this now, you know, like, and then I still have this other thing that I just healed. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think those 6 cards, and for what it's worth, I do think there are more than the 6 cards that we covered in this particular segment here. But those are the 6 that when I really went through the list and I said, you know, what do I really want to give more of a chance? What do I want to take extra time on? You know, especially now, right? Like we're 6 weeks into the meta game. We have a ton of information about all of it, and you can really start, you know, you probably know 55 cards in your deck almost all the time. You're like, all right, here's 55 cards. What do I do with these last 5 slots? And I'm encouraging players to challenge themselves to try other stuff, to like, just what I mean, we have Pixelborn like access to it, like literally right now. All 40 of you guys in the chat right now could be playing Pixelborn, listening to us chatter. Like, just take a couple cards out of your deck and try some of these cards and just see what it can do for you. See what matchups it's effective in. See if you can, you know, really warrant the opportunity. If you know that a certain card in certain matchups just are like just falling victim. And the other key thing here is like when you're making those choices, players often try and like increase their odds in a matchup by like 1% in a bad matchup. And I think that that's a waste of time in most cases. So I would be taking those cards out of my deck to make my particular matchup better against other matchups rather than trying to salvage a matchup that's like, I don't know, 75-25 or 70-30. Like going to like 32% is not good. So,
no, I agree.
If you have been following around the entire time here, for whatever reason, if you're not, hit subscribe, hit a like button for us. Hope you guys did enjoy this. And let me know, you know, if you're watching this after, there's a card that you think is definitely better that we missed. I'd love to hear it. There was a lot of chatter during this last particular section. Shout out to all of you guys. If I go back up a little bit, we have Amber Steel becomes mid-range. Princesses, I can see it. Timoteo, are you using both at the same time? I'm not sure. He says yes. We respond. Oh, this is another ring. My bad. Naturally, I tend to favor Rafiki to Zeus because Zeus is dead in the water after he drops. Very fair. I think he's warranted. With the more Emerald decks, the better Zeus gets, because Cuscos and Mad Hatters are a lot better when you can get rid of them in one shot. Bottom heavy characters super well with Jasmine. So yeah, there's lots going on, and shout out to you guys. Shout out to Papa Roops. I know you comment on videos all the time, so thank you very much for all your love and support. And yeah, Scott, I think it's gonna be about it for the evening. Thank you for joining me this wonderful evening. Couple weeks from Miami.
Yep.
Before we leave, it is my absolute goal that by the end of the weekend, our website will be up and running. And we, just to give everyone here, you know, a bit of a shout, like the plan is we're going to host deck lists there. We are going to host articles there. I have already set up, if you're watching this after fact, you haven't seen it yet, you're not in the Discord, join the Discord. I have a bit of a survey set up for players that have been successful in top 8s. If you go to the website, an older website, you would notice that we did this before in a lot of other games, but we gave basically a player the opportunity to talk about their deck and spotlight them in a section on the website. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to be like a top 8 section. So you'll just be on there for all of eternity until I run out of space on the website. But yeah, it's just a chance for players that enjoy the game and enjoy competitive to kind of just give their thoughts on their decks and things like that. It's also a chance that, you know, I will take that information, utilize it in an upcoming video as like, hey, this guy said this about this deck and I wanted to shout it out, especially in live streams like that, where we have a little more opportunity to be a little more broad with our content. All in all, I do hope you guys enjoyed this evening. We had a lot of fun, and we will catch you in the next video. See you guys.
Yeah.